All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD1000 Web Development Technologies course, I've been creating a series of video presentations that are based on the PowerPoint slides for one of the two textbooks for the class, and that book is the one as shown, Murox JavaScript and jQuery 4th edition. I have completed all of Section 1, a little bit of Section 2, and now I'm on the last chapter in Section 3, Chapter 16, how to work with objects. We get basic skills working with objects, the miles per gallon app, how to work with classes, the trips application, how to work with prototypes, more skills for working with objects, and then finally another relook at the task list. All right, that'll end it then for this particular section, and let's get to it. So, how to work with objects, and again, here are our applied objectives, and you notice, as you'd guess, since it's on objects, it's very heavy with classes and objects. And here's the beginning of our knowledge objectives, more knowledge objectives, and the end of our knowledge objectives. All right. Now, remember that if we were to say const invoice like this, and instead of having curly braces, we had brackets, it would be an object. But since we're using curly brace, I'm sorry, if you say const invoice equal bracket, it's an array. But by using curly braces instead of brackets, it's now an object. And what's an object? All right, basically, it's something that contains properties and methods. Properties are pieces of data, and methods are things that the object can do. I don't know how to put it any simpler than that. And when you are referring to an object, and you're referring to its properties, or you are referring to its methods, it's the name of the object dot, the name of the property, or the name of the object dot, the name of the method. One object can contain another object as one of its members. All right. So in this case, we've got an invoice object, and that invoice object contains a terms object. So notice if I want to, for example, refer to the description, it's invoice, the outer object, dot terms, the inner object, dot description, as an example. All right. So again, there would be an object literal. Properties are characteristics of an object. Just the same way with you and I, we each have a height, we each have a width, an eye color, a hair color, etc. Methods are things that the object can do. Typically, they're behaviors that can be performed by the object. Eat, drink, sleep, belch. That'd be like 4 things that a person object could do. You also saw a nested object, which is an object inside of another object. All right. Now, when you are creating a method inside of an object, I virtually always do it the second way. I don't use the word function. All right. I just literally, because technically what a method is a function that's created inside of an object or inside of a class. So I've never used that traditional syntax. I always use the concise method syntax that is shown right there. All right. 2 ways to initialize a property to a variable or a constant. So you've got 2 variables that are outside of anything. Let name equal Grace, and let year equal 2021. Now notice, using the traditional syntax, the name and the value. So when you're doing the initializing, it's name, name, and year, year. So that's kind of clumsy looking syntax. So when you do that, instead, you can write it the way with using the shorthand properties that are shown on the bottom of the slide. That's typically the way you'll see it. How to add properties and methods to an object. Create the object, as it says, add a property, add a method. Removing it uses the delete command. All right. Now, with the example that's shown right here, you've got const today equal new date, and then you've got const now equal today. All right. So, as far as I know, what happens in here now is both of these things are now pointing to or referring to the same object. So changing one of them will automatically change the other. All right. Quite often when you are working with objects, you'll have what are called getters and you'll have what are called setters. A getter, this is the way I typically refer to this. So, I'll tell students, I'll say, hey, imagine this. Come into class the first day and there's 20 people in the class. And I happen to have, 3 people named William. Okay, so 3 people named William. So as the people come in, they introduce themselves to me, and first person in there is, I say, hi, my name's Jeff Scott, and they said, hi, I'm William Smith. Okay, fine. Then a few more people come in, then another person comes in, and I say, hi, my name's Jeff Scott. And they say, hi, my name is William White. All right, a few more people come in, and another one comes in, I say, hi, my name's Jeff Scott, what's your name? And they say, my name is William Jones. Well, it's going to be kind of hard if they all want to be called William. Okay? Now, if I ask the person as they come in, what's your name? That's a get. But if I say, you know what? We've got three different Williams in here. So you were in first. So do you want to be called William? And William says yes. The second one says, I say, okay, you can be called Will or you can be called Bill. And that person says Bill. That's a set. And the last person would be Will. That's a set. Oftentimes when you refer to get, that's an actual accessor, while set is oftentimes called a mutator because you are changing a value. And you'll notice that when we use this, it's the name of the object dot the property. Okay. Terms related to methods and properties. We looked at the concise method syntax and the shorthand, a little bit at delete, how to refer to an object. All right. What data and what accessors are, what getters and setters are. A read-only property is just that. It can be read, but it can't be set. So it cannot appear on the left-hand side of an equal sign. Can't have a set routine run on it. A write-only property can be set, but you can't run a get on it. All right. The benefits of JavaScript libraries. Number 1, they let you group similar functionality in a single file. Number 2, they make your code easier to understand, maintain, and reuse, I should say, not rescue. Number 3, they encourage the separation of concerns. Let's just address each one of those. So we've got to be getting close to a time here. No, we're not. All right, but let's just take a quick look. So number 1, they let you group similar functionality in a single file. So if I were to write myself a bunch of library functions that would manipulate an array, let's say, that would allow you to get the largest value in the array, the smallest value, the average value, the sum of all values, etc. I might put those in a library routine. I might even put them in a single file. As it says in the second thing, that should make my code easier to understand, maintain, and reuse. Reuse is a real big benefit here. Why would you want to reinvent the wheel when you don't have to? And again, it is helping to encourage the separation of concerns. We've talked about this before. HTML should contain just the content. CSS should contain just the styling of the content, and JavaScript should contain the interactivity, the programming. All right. I've seen some books and some articles will say that basically you got to kind of look at it that the HTML is like the skin or the skeleton, and that CSS is like the clothes of a person, and JavaScript is kind of like their ability to talk and to think. All right, whichever way makes it easiest for you to understand. All right, so notice here the lib MPG file. So what do we have? We're saying that anytime you create a miles per gallon object, it will have a miles, which is really miles driven. It will have a gallons, which is really a gallons used. And it'll have a calculate routine, which will return the miles driven by the gallons used, which is your miles per gallon. So notice in here that in the body of our HTML, we can now include this library file. So we've got jQuery, followed by our library file, followed by our own individual file. And what are we doing in main? Well, mpg.miles and mpg.gallons, it's getting from here. mpg.calculate, it's getting from here. All right. And you can see the result here. And again, I cannot say this to you too many times. There are a multiple number of ways that when you start to do this stuff that you can do it. So there's the HTML, including your JavaScript. Notice again, they put it here on the bottom of the body section. And then here, as it says, this is the lib MPG file. We saw this stuff already, these two. We saw this already. Well, what's this doing? This is just validating, and it's saying that if either one of these contained a non-numeric value, return false. It's not valid. If either one of these contained a value that was less than or equal to 0, return false. So if that's true, non-numeric, return false. Otherwise, if they're out of range, return false. Otherwise, return true. So that's what the isValid is going to do. All right. And we only want to actually perform the calculation if the things that we have in there are indeed valid. All right. Hopefully that makes at least a little bit of sense. Here's the clear routine that just sets the value of everything to nothing, sets the focus to the field we want when the program starts. All right, how to use a class to define an object type. Now, this is fairly new. All right, this is not totally, but this is more like classes are done in a language like Java, not JavaScript, Java. Now, there are differences, all right? But this is more the way that it's done. And this has changed over time. JavaScript class designation has become more and more melded into pretty much the way that it looks in other languages. Not exactly, but pretty much. In other languages, this right here would probably not be called constructor. It would be just called invoice. Not class invoice, just invoice. But this is the constructor. Okay. Here, when we call new invoice, that's going to call this. It's going to set subtotal and tax rate both to null. Now we can come in and set the subtotal and set the tax rate and do the get total. And the get total will be done from right here. Notice if we don't use the new, we get what's called a type error because the system doesn't know exactly the type of variable invoice is, the fact that it is a class. Notice in the example at the top of the page here. Here, when we are creating the constructor, we are passing it in two values, a subtotal and a tax rate. All right? And when we create the new object, then we have to pass in two values. All right? So you see it here and here. So when you work with classes, really a class is a blueprint from which you can create objects. A constructor is the first method that gets called when you instantiate or create a class. All right, and an object is an instance of a class. In fact, the act of creating an object from a class is typically referred to as instantiation. All right. This looks like it'd be a good place to end our first one right here. We're about a third of the way through, so I'll be back shortly.